The Rain Games. Chapter 1. The Reaping. I wake with a start, my heart pounding. Another nightmare about the reaping. In just a few hours, 2 kids' names will be pulled from that glass ball, sentenced to die for the capital's entertainment. Most kids only get 1 entry each year, but I've got nearly 50 at this point. You get an extra entry for every year of age, and more if you sign up for Tesserae, like we've had to do. My shaking hand reaches for the rough spun blanket, clutching it tight. No point trying to get more sleep now. I slide out of the creaky bed I share with my sister and grab my hunting boots. The leather is cracked and worn, but they're the finest thing I own. I slip outside into the dim morning light and make my way through the scene, past the sagging old miners' shacks. The clanking of coal carts echoes from the distance as weary workers start their shifts. No sign of life otherwise except for an old tomcat scrounging by the bins. Once I'm beyond the district fence, I pause, listening for the hum of electricity that means live wires. But as usual, it's dead silent. A poor district like ours doesn't warrant full power, apparently. I duck under a broken chain link and retrieve my bow and quiver stashed in a hollow log. The forest is my true home, where I can move quick and quiet, bringing down game to feed my family or trading it in the hob. But even out here in my element, dread sits like a stone in my gut. By mid-morning, I've got 3 rabbits and a turkey to trade. It'll fetch a decent price, maybe even enough for some candy for the kids as a special reaping treat. I try not to think about how this might be their last, or how the odds aren't exactly in my favor. 50 entries, other kids have it even worse. And still we have to act excited, to be honored to be chosen. Back inside the fence, I do a sweep to make sure no peacekeepers are around before scurrying to the hob. Greasy Sae looks up from her bubbling pot of mystery stew and gives me a toothless grin. Well, if it isn't my best supplier, what do you have today? I hold up my haul and her eyes widen. My, we'll eat like kings tonight. She hands me a generous stack of coins and I slip it into my pocket. On my way out, I slip some to the man carving wooden toys too. His little girl loves when I bring treats home. By the time I get back, the kids are dressed in their reaping best. My little sister Allie darts over, her face streaked with tears. "Why aren't you ready?" She frantically tugs at my filthy shirt. I calm her and help get them all fed and looking presentable before finally cleaning myself up. My itchy blue dress will have to do. People are already filing into the square when we arrive. Identity scans, check-in lines, herds of penned-off children. I grit my teeth and try not to scream as we're filtered into roped areas like cattle to the slaughter. Then Ify Trinket trots out onto the stage in some gaudy capital getup, chirping about what an honor this all is. I clench my fists so hard they shake. After the propaganda film, it's time. Ify plucks a name from the girls' ball that I pray isn't mine. But the odds were never in my favor. Sarah Gray. No. This can't be happening. Allie starts to wail as I numbly make my way toward the stage. I search for my parents' faces, trying to be strong for them. Then Ify draws the name of the lanky, terrified-looking boy who will have to try to kill me. Fantastic. But before he can take the stage, a voice shouts I volunteer. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd as down the aisle strides Tom Snow, grandson of our only living champion. What the hell does he think he's doing? Snow grins and waves, lapping up the attention. Ify looks thrilled at the prospect of a champion relative competing again. I scowl at the smug pretty boy who's probably been trained for glory since he could walk. The anthem plays, and were whisked away into custody immediately after. I'm grateful at least that I get to say goodbye to my family. They burst in, clutching me desperately, all talking over each other, saying how much they love me and pleading for me to try my best to come home. I don't make hollow promises. I just do my best to memorize every detail of their faces before the peacekeepers drag them out. Then I'm hurried onto the train bound for the capital and the fight of my life. I stare out the window, watching District 12 disappear, wondering if I'll ever see home again. Chapter 2: The Capital. The tribute train moved in almost total silence through the dark Appalachian Mountains. Only the rhythmic clacking of the wheels on the tracks and the muffled sobs of the male tribute in his chamber broke the quiet. Sarah had refused any lavish accommodations or services on the journey, taking her meals alone in her room. She had no interest in delicacies or small talk. Survival was her only focus now. Tom Snow, on the other hand, indulged eagerly in the extravagant train's offerings, as if he were already a champion tribute on a victory tour rather than a competitor yet to prove himself. Sarah observed him strutting around in fine suits, shamelessly charming the Capitol escort and stylists. It turned her stomach. When they finally arrived in the Capitol, Sarah was nearly blinded by the flashing lights and overwhelmed by the sheer ecstatic crowds. The skyline looked like something from a dream, shining towers of metal and glass instead of the drab gray mines and shacks of home. But the people perplexed her most, with their garish clothes and bizarre modifications to their bodies in pursuit of fashion. They cheered obliviously, already picking their favorite tributes to bet on like racehorses. Tom lapped up the attention, waving and blowing kisses to the spectators. He turned to Sarah with a grin. "Come on, you've got to work the crowd a little, don't you want these people to like you?" Sarah scowled, keeping her face emotionless. "Not particularly. I'd rather they not notice me at all." Tom laughed. "Good luck with that. Better to make them want to invest in your success now." He returned to smiling broadly and pumping his fist like a conquering hero arriving home. Once inside the towering training center, the tributes and mentors prepared for the opening ceremonies that night. Sarah's stylists scrutinized her body, erasing any flaws with lasers and oils and brainstorming costume ideas. Tom gladly submitted to beautification, teasing the blushing prep team. When at last they were dressed and prepped for the event, Sarah had to admit the stylists had done their work well. Gleaming in matching sleek black unitards, patterned with flickering orange and yellow accents, Sarah and Tom wore feathered costumes representing coal and flames. As they pulled up to the massive crowds in their chariot, Tom whispered to Sarah, "Chins up, eyes proud. They're going to love this." Sarah took a deep breath and decided if playing along helped her chances of survival, she could manage it briefly. Tom's grandfather, the champion mentor Abernathy, rode behind them in the chariot, reeking of alcohol but grinning and waving. The crowds went wild for the Snow family together again. Sarah remained stoic, but she couldn't deny the pulsating energy. When they passed the balcony where President Mironia watched coldly, she met his snake-like eyes with her own steely gaze. She would show no fear, not to him or anyone else. This was a battle she intended to win on her own terms. Chapter 3: Training. Mornings in the training center are a flurry of activity as we prepare for each grueling session. We eat protein-rich breakfasts, strong coffee for stamina, supplements and tinctures for strength. Tom jokes around with the attendants and stylists, while I focus on consuming as much fuel as I can hold. Once we're in our training uniforms, we head down to meet the other tributes already gathering. They're an impressive bunch overall, though some definitely stand out more. The tributes from Districts 1, 2, and 4 are always the biggest threats. They train at special academies and can't wait to bring honor home. Massive Titus from 2 keeps punching the hanging bags, making them swing wildly on their chains. He smirks when he sees me watching. Beside him, his district partner twirls a spear, moving with lethal precision. She winks at Tom, who smiles back a bit too friendly for my comfort. Fantastic ally there. I opt to spend time on survival skills rather than showing off with weapons. Let them underestimate me while I practice building shelters, starting fires, camouflage, and identifying edible plants. Tom eagerly works his way through the weapons stations, chatting up other tributes. I can't deny he's skilled with those blades. But I don't intend to ally myself with a spoiled show-off. When alone, I stick to honing my archery skills. No need to reveal my full abilities this early. At night, Tom eagerly soaks up our mentor's advice while I keep to myself. Abernathy regales us with stories of his games long ago, how he played to the cameras and used his charm and cunning. Tom hangs on his every word. I just try to remember everything I learned about finding water, traps, and healing plants. When training scores come back after our private sessions, Tom pulls an impressive 9. No surprise there. I'm pleased with my 7. Now for our televised interviews where the Capitol falls in love with you or writes you off as hopeless. I know what angle I need to play. Back in my chambers, my stylist has me try on gown after gown, looking for just the right one for my image. I end up in a shimmering dress with tiny lights, embedded to look like a starry night sky. They leave my hair down in soft waves and only use a touch of makeup so I still look young and innocent. Absolutely charming, chirps my stylist. Now remember, darling, be open and endearing. Make them care about sweet Sarah from District 12. Play it softly, not too forced or arrogant. You're a gentle, doe-eyed girl they'll want to protect. I nod, ignoring how his simpering tone grates on me. I hate playing act, but I know it's necessary for survival now. Out under the hot stage lights, each tribute takes their turn trying to win over the roaring crowds in Caesar Flickerman's interview seat. Titus plays up being vicious and ready to kill. The career girls giggle and toss their hair, flirting their way into favor. Then it's my turn. I allow myself to blush and smile shyly, smoothing my glimmering dress as I walk out timidly. The audience sighs, entranced already. Perfect. Caesar takes my hand gently, like a kindly uncle. We chat lightly about my family, my home, before he asks if I have any secret talents I've been hiding. Right on cue, I look down bashfully and say I do love music, though I'm not very good. But Caesar insists I sing something. The audience cheers encouragingly. So softly at first, then growing stronger, I sing an old folk song about mountains and meadows and hope. By the end, the crowd is hushed and emotional. Caesar clasps my hand, his eyes glistening. That was truly beautiful, little songbird. We are all wishing you the best of luck. And I know sponsors' gifts will come raining down if I make it past the first day. Chapter 4, Let the Games Begin. Tom hardly slept the night before the games launch, buzzing with too much nervous energy. All his life he'd heard tales of his grandfather's valor winning the crown. Their legacy was all but forgotten until now. This was Tom's shot at greatness. He paced the polished floor of his chambers, practicing with his personal gift, a blade with a sterling silver handle. Of course, tributes weren't allowed real weapons in training, only rubber fakes. But Tom's grandfather had paid a small fortune to game maker Seneca Crane to arrange this token for him, gifted by a generous sponsor. Having a real blade at the start could make all the difference. Tom imagined how he would play it. I dashed to the nearest packs and weapons at the horn, grabbing essentials, taking out at least one other tribute in those frantic early minutes. Selecting a choice weapon, perhaps leading a pack for a while with fellow couriers before it was time to stand alone. He'd wear an insignia from home for luck, maybe his family ring or token from his grandfather. Something to make the crowds remember the noble Snow family each time the cameras focused on him. There was only one troubling matter: his district partner, Sarah. She'd played the Capitol crowds brilliantly with that shy, innocent act. But Tom knew there was more to her. He'd watched her train, how swiftly she could scale obstacles and take down targets with her arrows. Under that soft exterior was a ruthless instinct for survival. And survival was what mattered most in the end. He shouldn't underestimate her. At last it was time. The windows of the hovercraft went black as they approached the secret arena location. Peacekeepers escorted Tom to the launch room where prep teams stood waiting with his arena outfit: simple sturdy pants, boots, and jacket. No armor provided, other than one's wits. Tom's hands trembled slightly as they dressed him and affixed the tracker to his ankle. This was really happening now. His stylist squeezed his shoulders. "Your family would be so proud. You look just like your grandfather on his game's launch day. Be brave and make him proud. Bring honor to your name." Tom lifted his chin and nodded. A lifetime of expectations rode on this moment. Too quickly, he was ascending into the arena tube, blinded by daylight. An announcer boomed, "Tributes, prepare to launch in 10, 9. Tom took a deep breath. This was his destiny. With a jolt, the plate below lifted him up into open air. For 60 seconds, Tom got his bearings as the countdown ticked. 24 tributes circled a shining gold horn of plenty in the center, piled with weapons and packs. Beyond it was dense jungle and the gleam of a lake. That would be his first target. A gong sounded and chaos erupted. Tom leaped from his plate, scooping up a pack on the way. At the horn, he grabbed 2 razor-sharp throwing knives and a serrated machete. Another tribute rushed him. Tom threw a knife straight into his chest and kept running. 1 down already. Distant screams and cannons fired. Tom tore into the trees, racing for the lake. An arrow whizzed past his head from somewhere unseen. But he didn't look back. Within minutes, he plunged into the cool water, swimming hard. When he finally surfaced near the far bank, panting but grinning, 8 faces already shone in the sky. The first day's blood had just begun to spill. Now the real games would start. Chapter 5: Surviving the Arena. That first day lasted an eternity. When we rose into the arena, I forced myself to stay cool and stick to my plan. As the gong sounded, I leapt from my plate and raced for the trees rather than the horn. Grabbing 1 small pack on my way, I scrabbled up into the branches just as the couriers reached the valuable supplies. They were distracted, fighting viciously over the best weapons and packs. I didn't wait to see who prevailed. Staying hidden was my first priority. I worked my way higher into the dense canopy, climbing silently from tree to tree with my pack secured. The foliage provided good cover if I kept moving. As the sky darkened, the toll of the first day's bloodbath boomed, 10 dead overall. Faces of the fallen shone bright above, then vanished. So many more would follow. But I couldn't lose focus wondering who lived or died. I had to survive each moment. When the seal appeared again, I risked a fireless camp to sleep. The leaves and branches obscured me well enough. I woke every few hours at any unfamiliar sound, sleeping lightly, weapon ready. Days passed in a haze of constant motion, always scanning the shadowy jungle for threats, seeking water and forage, careful to leave no trail. Sometimes the silence would be broken by distant screams or sobs as another tribute met their end. Each time the cannon fired, my heart stilled until I was sure it wasn't meant for me. When the giant mutated wasp swarmed, drawn by the rotting corpses, I hid myself in mud and leaves until they passed. And still the jungle remained my protection. The world narrowed to each step, each breath, each moment of continued life. Until the day the poison rain came without warning. The cloudless sky suddenly opened up, a deluge of liquid that sent animals fleeing in terror. I cursed myself for not heeding their instincts sooner as the first drops hit my skin. The searing pain told me all I needed to know: acid rain, designed to drive us out of hiding or suffer horribly. I tore off my jacket to cover my head and started running blindly, tripping and crashing through the undergrowth as the rain ate away at any exposed skin. Some died screaming where they stood, but I couldn't stop with death nipping at my heels. I plunged into the lake waters, submerging myself entirely, as around me the downpour shredded leaves from trees and left smoking trails along the ground. I stayed under until my burning lungs felt they might burst. When at last the rain ceased, half the remaining tributes were dead or dying from the game maker's sadistic trick. Pain racked my body as I dragged myself from the lake and collapsed in the mud, biting back screams. But I wasn't dead yet. And if I could survive this, it meant I was strong enough to survive anything they threw at me in this nightmare arena. I had to keep fighting. Chapter 6: Desperate Measures. Tom awoke to a now familiar humid arena morning, sore but satisfied after another night of uneasy rest. His bandaged leg still ached where the mutt's fangs had found their mark 2 days prior. But the medicine from his sponsor gift had prevented infection at least. He knew he couldn't hope for many more of their pricey deliveries. Checking his snares, he was pleased to find 2 plump rabbits caught in the night. He skinned and spitted them over the fire while he took stock of his remaining resources. His original pack was long gone, lost while evading the poison rain. All he had now was a knife, rope, small pot, and bottle for water. 7 tributes were still out there somewhere. And with resources dwindling, they would all be growing more desperate. After burying his fire remains and covering any traces of his camp, Tom headed down to the lake to refill his bottle and check the traps he'd set below the surface. He'd learned the hard way after that first blissful swim that the inviting lake was also infested with deadly mutts designed to look like roots and weeds. One had tried to take a chunk out of his leg before he made it back to shore. As the cornucopia came into view between the trees, Tom halted. Something was off. A lone figure stood beside the empty bounty of supplies, frantically digging through the barren mouth, as if searching for any scrap that remained. Tom slid silently behind a tree, watching for any others who may be lying in wait. But the boy seemed to be alone in his desperation. Tom felt a twinge of pity for the scrawny kid from District 5. What was his name? Barley? Banyan? It didn't really matter now, he supposed. There was no room for sentimentality here. Tom knew what he had to do. Still, he hesitated, gripping his knife tightly. The odds were never in that boy's favor from the start. It all could have easily been reversed, Tom starving and afraid while someone like Titus stalked him. A rustle of leaves nearby made Tom's decision for him. Waiting meant risking another tribute stumbling across them and costing him his advantage. He took a breath, whispered sorry about this, though he wasn't sure why, and sent the knife flying into the boy's back before he even knew Tom was there. One more cannon fired as Tom walked silently away, not looking back. the generosity of sponsors only stretched so far. He had to harden himself to survive. That night, the faces of the dead shone brightly in the sky. Only 6 tributes left now after the boy from 5. The numbers were growing dire. Tom tried to rest, but fitfully woke from the same recurring nightmare, trapped and disarmed by enemies, weaponless and awaiting death he could not prevent. If he couldn't win the game soon, the game makers would unleash some fresh hell upon them all. He needed to rally and take out the others fast. When the dawn brought a distant clanging of bells, Tom readied himself for whatever new torture would commence. He tore through the jungle, poured the sound against his better judgment, knowing answers awaited there. The trees fell away abruptly, replaced by a barren landscape of rocky dirt and ruins surrounding a crumbling tower with the bells. Tom scanned for any movement before approaching. The bleak wasteland looked like something from the ancient times before Panem rose from the ashes of war. Tom hadn't realized just how vast the arena grounds were until now. At the tower's base lay a tomb-like opening leading down into darkness. Tom steeled himself. Whatever this latest diversion was meant to drive them toward, he had little choice but to spring the trap. Gripping his knife, he descended into the tunnel, the bells tolling ominously behind him. Chapter 7: Crumbling Ruins. Those damn bells drove us all like cattle, ringing incessantly night and day. I'd been far on the other side of the lake when they started, but soon changed direction, knowing it signaled the next stage of sick challenges to come. Looked like a final showdown was imminent. My legs still pained me from the spider mutt's bite even days later, but I pushed on. I had to reach that tower, whether to confront enemies or find answers. The land turned desolate and dusty, ruins that reminded me of the bones of ghost towns back home, relics of the world before Panem were nuclear war laid waste. A wasteland that promised danger. The screams were faint, but unmistakable from inside the crumbling tower. Cannon fire followed. Someone already sprang this trap and paid the price. I approached the gaping entrance, bow loaded and heart drumming. Down the rough stone steps I crept, relying on my senses in the blackness. The sickly sweet stench of death grew stronger until my feet hit a soft mass that sent me reeling back. Mud spider again, even larger in death. At least this one took someone with it to the grave. Further below, I heard ragged breathing and a clang of metal. There must be survivors of this place, probably fighting for some prize. Part of me wanted to slip away unnoticed rather than face the threats below. But the bells wouldn't relent until the game makers had their victor. So I steeled myself and moved silently down the tunnel. I came upon the grisly sight. Suddenly one figure lay still and bloody, while the last 2 tributes fought brutally in the lantern light of a tomb-like chamber. Survival instinct kicked in. I drew back into shadow, taking aim at the tribute closest to me. The arrow flew straight between his shoulders. He collapsed with a gurgling gasp as the last cannon fired. For a long, terrible moment, I locked eyes with the one remaining tribute across the ruins. Tom Snow, painted with streaks of red, knife poised to throw. My hand went reflexively to the knife at my belt, our gazes unwavering. The bells tolled on. So this was how it would end. Just him and me now, too weary to feel the hunger and pain anymore. All that training and scheming and death boiling down to one final fight. I saw my own bone-deep exhaustion reflected in Tom's eyes. But I also saw the desperate, unbending will to live. We both knew only one could walk out of this tomb alive. With a primal cry, Tom flung his blade straight at my heart. I dove aside just in time, the knife clattering against stone. My arrow flew in return, but Tom anticipated it, rolling away. We circled each other warily like two cornered animals. I feinted left, then struck out with my foot, catching his knee. He grunted in pain but slashed with his own knife, slicing my forearm. I gritted my teeth against the searing pain. Back and forth we exchanged blows and blood, neither gaining advantage for more than a second. Tom tackled me, slamming my head back against the stones with his hands at my throat. Darkness threatened to take me as I choked and clawed. With my last ounce of strength, I drove my knee up hard, flipping Tom off me. As he gasped for the breath I'd knocked away, I grabbed a fallen rock and swung it at his temple. He collapsed with a sickening crack. For a long moment, I hunched gasping beside his still form, waiting for the cannon shot that would end it all. But the silence dragged on. Tom's chest still rose and fell shallowly. He was alive, but out cold. I cradled my throbbing arm, glancing around desperately for any way out besides the deathmatch. And that's when I noticed it, a sliver of light from a narrow cleft in the stones behind dusty vines. A hidden exit. Hope surged in my battered heart. We didn't have to die like animals down here in the dark. I could still cling to my humanity, escape this tomb, then find a way to end these twisted games. But I had to move fast. Grabbing my gear, I squeezed into the jagged opening. Fresh air hit my face as I emerged outside the tower into blessed light. The bells finally stopped ringing. I turned and ran for the trees, refusing to look back. Chapter 8: Revelations. Consciousness returned slowly through a pounding haze of pain. Tom's eyes blinked open to find only darkness and the stench of blood. He gasped, disoriented, groping for his knife before it all came rushing back. The ruins, the final fight, the rock crushing his skull. But somehow, he was alive. Tom groaned, managing to prop himself on an elbow, reaching gingerly to the sticky matted wound on his head. His breaths came ragged in the still silence. He waited for the trumpets and hovercraft to claim the victor. But there was only ringing quiet. As Tom's eyes adjusted, he saw the dim shape of the cleft in the stones where Sarah must have slipped away, leaving him unconscious but alive. Stunned understanding washed over him. In the end, she had refused to kill in cold blood, even knowing it could cost her life if he revived. She chose mercy over murder. And in doing so, she had defied the capital and their games. Tom dragged his aching body out into open air, half expecting Mutz to be unleashed upon him as punishment. But no threats appeared. Only the trees and lake remained, indifferent to whatever took place among the tributes. Sarah would likely not get far, injured and exposed as she was. But she had a head start on him while he lay recovering in the ruins. If he hunted her down now, he might still be crowned victor before she bled out. The arrogant grandson who restored glory to his name, his family legacy. Wasn't that all he wanted from the start? Tom looked at his filthy, blood-caked hands, then up at the empty sky. "What am I doing?" he croaked. This was never right. Had he really been so blinded by pride and ambition that he'd reveled in the violence and cruelty, forgotten his humanity? His noble words to comfort that boy from 5 returned to mock him. In the end, Tom was no better than the capital overlords who threw innocent lives into their grinder. He had played right into their hands. But no longer. Something in him had cracked open amidst the horror. He would not hunt Sarah down. Let them punish him or set their mutts to tear him apart. He refused to kill for their entertainment again. Stumbling back toward the lake, Tom washed away the crusted gore and assessed his injuries. He had lost a lot of blood from that head wound. Even if Sarah made it home, the capital would not let Tom's defiance stand. His time was short. At least now he could meet death with a few shreds of honor. As the hovercraft appeared to collect him, Tom closed his eyes and conjured up memories of his home, his family, his life before the reaping. If he had any soul left, perhaps they would know in the end he tried to stand for what was right. Then everything faded to black. Chapter 9, No True Victor. It's been a week since I limped from the arena, the trumpets blaring my supposed victory. But I don't feel like much of a victor. They whisked me away and erased my wounds with medicine and machines, erasing the outward damage anyway. My mind still feels shattered. I should be dead. Even Tom's life was clearly meant to end in the arena after he defied their rules. They tell me he succumbed to his wounds and Mutz finished him off. But I know they executed the poor fool for showing mercy and refusing to keep killing for their sport. So now I'm the Mockingjay who slipped free from the traps by some miracle. But they still own me. I'll have a new house in Victor's village back home, never wanting for food or medicine again. Such benevolence. And all they ask is for me to keep playing my role, to parade around on the victory tour, mentoring more terrified kids each year to die for glory. To pretend their tyranny is justified. Maybe I should have let Tom end it back there. What life awaits me now, haunted by ghosts and condemned to be at peace in their games forever. I stare at my gaudy crown on the dresser. In the mirror, I don't recognize the shattered girl looking back. I fear she's already gone. Epilogue. Under smiling masks, the capital elite whisper of the unprecedented defiance and stirrings of rebellion after the games. But the president reassures them the Mockingjay's wings have been sufficiently clipped. She is his tool now, her song contained. The champion's kin bury their fallen hope, having sacrificed him for hubris. His death exposed the rot and cruelty beneath the shimmering lies. In the districts, people begin to take notice. Small seeds of dissent are planted. And a girl tribute wanders her hollow home in Victor's village, waiting for the nightmares that come each night. She can never be just Sarah again. But the spark inside her is not yet extinguished. It is the spark of humanity that refuses to be extinguished, rising from the ashes again. The end.